Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Lee Kaplan, I always have fun when he comes on. You know, there's a certain, he's brilliant. He has incredible experience, well-versed in what he talks about. He's intellectually stimulating, and he's a little bit, I don't know how to say it, but surprising. He always brings something that kind of keeps me a little off my balance, which may be good for me. I don't know, but I always find it fun having you on. He's with Smicer, Kaplan, and Veselka, LLP, which is skv.com, if you want to learn more about him. I really appreciate all those names you put in there for your partners. You need to think about that next time. You know, Kaplan I can handle, but this Veselka, come on.
Well, we get correspondence addressed to various names with various spellings, but they normally make it there. I need an introduction like that every morning for my ego, Kevin, so I may come in more often.
I'll have my producer make a copy of that, and you can have it at the office, and you can just hit that before you do anything else at work. But it's true, you always do a great job, and I always get positive feedback. I always like what you bring to the table all the time. You bring some really interesting insight, because I really believe that the legal field, and I say your particular aspect of the legal field, is always kind of a harbinger of things to come and what's happening in the business front in general. Last time you were here, you kind of did an inventory of 3 major cases that you were working on that I thought were like, I mean, you could actually see a paradigm shift in the way business will be conducted just from those 3 cases. And so I found it fascinating. What kind of things are you working on, or your practices working on these days that might be of interest?
Well, what I talked about just a couple of weeks ago are still on the front burner, one of them being the written contract that was modified by circumstances, that was orally modified by the parties because they recognized realities. And now the other side, who's figured out that it's costing them more money, which they knew at the time, has decided that that oral modification doesn't work. And I think what I said at the last program is you really want to find a way to document anything you change in a contract, because you want to stay away from the courthouse. Don't make the lawyers rich. Run your business and try to run it without us. What I really want to talk about today, though, is something that occurred to me last week in connection with a jury case, that somebody was complaining about the number of people who didn't show up for jury duty in the Harris County courts. And the draw for the state courts in Harris County is off the driver's licenses. So you get a very wide cross-section of the community. And I just want to encourage people to show up for jury duty. Most trials are very short, and frankly, it's the closest connection you'll have with our entire governing system and the rule of law, other than renewing your license plates or paying your property taxes. And I think in general the whole system is improved if people show up for jury duty.
Be a part.
And don't try to get out of it.
Yeah, one of the reasons why they bring in so many more than they really end up needing is because so many won't show up.
That's true on the civil side. On the criminal side, often there's so many people who have a relative or family member that has had trouble with the law, a criminal issue, and a lot of those people get struck because one way or another they think they can't be fair. Either they think they'd be too sympathetic to someone charged with the same thing, or someone in their family was a victim, and sometimes they're struck because defense lawyers think they'd just be way too harsh on a jury.
Yeah, that makes sense as well. And there's a lot of things going on that are so behind the scenes and between the ears when you're dealing with criminal cases in particular.
Well, yes, but the important thing is we have 12 people on a criminal jury. We have somewhere between 6 and 12 on civil juries, so we do get a cross-section.
Is that based on the amount of money involved, or how is that?
No, it really depends on preferences. You start off with 12 usually, and you sometimes lose jurors on the civil side. On the criminal side, you're going to stick with the number, unless everyone agrees to go with fewer. On the civil side, you can have a 10-2 verdict or an 11-1 verdict, and so sometimes you'll lose. And once in a while, and I think in the county courts, you may have fewer jurors. But the whole point is we could easily have just one judge decide every case. That's not how the system works. And I personally, as much as I respect a number of the state court judges, I would rather have a multitude of prejudices that sort of cancel each other out and people working together to overcome their prejudices in a jury room, rather than one judge who undoubtedly has, things in his or her background that makes them more biased or more likely to end up on one side or the other.
Yeah.
So I've never been selected for a jury. I've been on panels frequently, and I hear people talk about trying to get out of jury duty and not doing it, but it is very interesting to serve on a jury, and it's a very useful thing. My wife served on a jury in what she said was a deadly dull case in federal court, but she said it was fascinating just to figure out what happened, because the way the evidence is presented is often on certain narrow channels, so they're left wondering about some things because of the rules of evidence. But she enjoyed her jury service, and she's a corporate lawyer, and the last thing corporate lawyers want is things in the courts.
Right.
And she enjoyed it, so I'd tell people
because they got to spend time in the court. Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. I 52 years old, and I've only been invited for one panel, and they didn't choose me.
Well, maybe they looked at your driver's license and you didn't make the cut. No, actually, in Harris County, state court, it's driver's licenses. In federal court, and by the way, the turnout is much better in federal court, even though the Southern District of Texas covers more counties, and it's more of a hardship for some people to come, say, to the Houston Division for a trial. That's done off voter registration lists. The turnout, as you might expect, is better because people who are registered to vote usually are more proactive about that. Everybody gets a driver's license. But also, I think in federal court, the marshals might be sent out for you if you don't show up for jury duty.
There you go.
So
and probably, absolutely. All the more reason to show up, not to mention the fact it's just a very good thing to do as a citizen.
Right. And it's fun. It's easy for me to say that since I'm the lawyer rather than the juror. I've never been selected for a jury, but I think that jurors at the end of whatever trial I'm involved in, whether it's 2 days or 2 or 3 weeks, always end up saying it was very enjoyable, it was fascinating, they're glad they did it. Mm-hmm. So, and that's not a self-selected group. Those are people who are picked for the jury, and a lot of times when their name is called to go from the panel into the jury box, you see them roll their eyes. So you know they didn't really want it, but they come in, and people, they do their duty. They're very conscientious, and they enjoy the process, and they're glad they've done it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great, and that's the kind of thing that I'm going to be promoting over at USDailyReview.com. This is as a standalone article because I think it's very important. I think we got a problem with apathy in general. I think we have a problem with entitlement in our culture, and you can't maintain a free society. You can't maintain rule of law unless we're personally invested in it, be it voting, be it jury duty, or whatever these opportunities are. They're not just responsibilities and obligations, they're also opportunities to continue to maintain rule of law, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest issues with the Affordable Care Act is this question that as we see the act rolled out, we see virtually every aspect of it that's rolled out being mishandled or botched. That too breeds skepticism about government. And the surveys have shown ever since Watergate a steadily decreasing level of confidence in what government can do. And as we see the two parties diverge more, as we see the Affordable Care Act being delayed in parts, that is, the parts that prove to be administratively difficult, people's disrespect for government grows. So I would encourage people to be involved.
Be involved.
That doesn't mean that you've got to be an activist and go to the precinct party conventions, but it does mean in these small ways, such as jury duty, you ought to be involved.
Lee Kaplan, you can see why we get him on here. Great stuff as always. And we will be sharing this over at USDailyReview.com. We always put your content on there, but I'm going to do a single article on this because I think this is really important over there. That's Spicer, Kaplan, and Veselka, skv.com. Don't want to find it easily. Thanks so much, Lee.
Thank you.
When we come back, much more for you. The best content here, including this interview, can be found over there at USDailyReview.com, and this is The Price of Business.